we have seen some emulation on the channel, mainly on Android, but there, the limit is quite clear with the latest Snapdragon. The heaviest console you can emulate are the PlayStation 2, GameCube and Wii. But in the world of Windows and PCs, the ceiling is much higher. And with the new wave of mobile devices that offer a full gaming PC experience, the difference between mobile and PC is getting thinner every day. Today, we are reviewing the Aya Neo Next, the first PC test on the channel, and using the opportunity to learn all about the emulators available in Windows, and how well they run on this device. Welcome back, I'm Claudio, and this is Zero to Tech. Aya is one of the world pioneers of portable gaming PCs. They took advantage of the leap in efficiency and performance from AMD's Ryzen processors and decided to take their chances to design their first product, the Aya Neo. The one we have today is the direct evolution of that same product, with every technical specification updated. At first glance, the box looks like that of any other product, except by the size, which tells you there is a lot inside. When you open it, first you have the accessories, which are a travel case and a screen protector. Then the next box still looks quite normal, but it includes some gloves they recommend you to use to take out the product. Let's play dumb and follow the indications. After the protection sponge, we can see the final box, which comes in a darkened plastic, and show the logos and design in the background. It makes it clear, this is not a cheap product. We open it, and first we have the typical box with all the documentation. It is very simple, but it comes in several languages. It also includes a microfiber to clean the device. Below, you can see the plastic that covers the device. It's kind of a quick manual and shows off some of its technology. Below, we can finally see the start of the show, the Aya Neo Next, which comes in a very nice dark blue color. And it is just a computer in a portable console format, with the screen in the center and the controller on the sides. Let's continue the unboxing because it includes more things. The accessories come covered with a cardboard that indicates what each one is. We have different tips for the different countries. The charger, which is 65 watts, has a two-prong American connector, and both USB-A and USB-C output. Two OTG adapters since it only has USB-C ports, and a little box with the cable to charge it, which really doesn't feel that premium. The design will make sense to anyone who has used a Switch or a PSP. We have the 7-inch IPS screen with a 1280 by 800 resolution. Might sound low, but just like the Switch, it is more than enough for the resolutions you can play with, and you'll hardly notice the pixels while playing. And yes, it's also a touchscreen. The controller is based on the Xbox One. In the left, we have the analog stick, which has a metallic touch underneath, the D-pad, and the start and select buttons. On the right side, we have the front buttons with the Xbox positions, the second stick, and two buttons specific to this device. Also, it does include rumble. In the top, we have the shoulder buttons, marked as LB, RB, LT, and RT, with LT and RT being analog, and they have a lot of trouble, similar to the Xbox controller. We also have the power button, which also works as a fingerprint reader, the volume rocker, the headphone jack, a power LED, the first USB-C port, and the air outlet for the heatsink, and the inlet in the back. Below, we have the stereo speakers and the second USB-C port. Something to mention is that the analog sticks and the analog buttons use a technology called Hall effect. This measures the movement based on magnets, so there are no moving parts inside like a normal stick. It's not really a new technology, but they choose it because supposedly it will never have drift issues. The size from the front is a little bigger than the Switch, possibly 1 cm on each side, but it's almost twice as thick. This because having a PC processor needs much more cooling, and you'll feel it on its weight. With 720 grams against only 420 of the Switch OLED. Obviously, we are talking about much more power, with the Ryzen 5825U. It still uses Vega graphics and not RDNA 2 like the Steam Deck. The difference is that, while the CPU of the Steam Deck has only 4 cores with Zen 2 architecture, this Ryzen has 8 cores using Zen 3, which is an important leap in performance, and although GPU is almost always more important for games, to emulate the heaviest consoles, a beefier CPU makes a big difference. In theory, enough specifications to run any game, at the screen resolution with 30 FPS or more. This version has 1TB of SSD, and 16GB of RAM with 4266 MHz, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth, and a 47 Wh battery that AI claims lasts between 2 and 6 hours of gaming depending on the profile. In theory, enough specifications to run any game at the screen resolution with 30 FPS or more. And that's the idea of all these devices, to have a portable console able to play the newest PC games. And we can talk a while about performance and benchmarks, but the most important thing is to see what it's really like to use it. So let's jump to the tests. First, this is a regular Windows PC, in a strange format, with all the good and the bad. First, I tried to update Windows, and typical Windows update problems. It got stuck, and this blocked the installation of the Xbox app. But well, common Windows problems and not the INEO. But I had to solve it before any test. Then, using Windows without a keyboard or a mouse is not easy, even in tablet mode. So I used this Logitech keyboard, connect with one of the OTG adapters for the installation process. But note that, between the touchscreen and the virtual mouse implemented with the left stick and buttons, you have everything you need to use it. The right stick also serves as a scroll wheel, and the LT as the back button. It helps, but this is still Windows. The only additional app installed is iSpace, which works as a more controller-friendly interface. It starts with Windows and shows you the installed games. It had no problems detecting them from the Epic Store, the Xbox app, and Steam. But emulators had to be added manually as apps, and it's not very smart. For example, it still shows the Microsoft Solitaire collection, even when I uninstalled it. And there is no way to add or remove what it shows you, some detail that must be polished. We can open it at any time if we keep the additional large button pressed. If we press it only once, it shows you the quick interface, which allows you to change things like volume, brightness, CPU, and fan modes, and other shortcuts like showing the keyboard or muting the sound. It can also show performance meters. And speaking of performance, these CPUs adjust their speed based on the available power or watts. But remember, this is shared between the CPU and the GPU. So we have 4 modes. The lowest, called Custom, which limits the power consumption to 5 watts. And I don't know why it's called Custom if you cannot change it, but okay. Next up is the Power Saving at 11 watts, Balance at 15 watts, and Game at 20 watts, which is the highest from stock. Remember to change the fan mode too. For some reason, they're called Wild, X, and Saving, instead of something obvious like High, Medium, or Low. Just remember to turn it up for games. Of course, these are the limits included, but being a Ryzen PC, overclocking is not much of a problem. And we did up to 40 watts without issues. Of course, this means even less battery and more temp, but it can handle it. Speaking of temps, with the thermal camera, we can see that, at 20 watts, it reaches 47 degrees Celsius at some points in the screen. This was taken during the GPU and CPU benchmark. Pretty good job dissipating the heat. The small additional button is used to show the desktop, and if you have something running, it can switch between the app and the desktop. If you press it for a while, it is equivalent to Ctrl-Alt-Delete, still important enough to put a button for it. One of the advantages of being a regular Windows computer is that you can put it to sleep by simply pressing the power button, and it wakes up just as quickly. With the fingerprint sensor, you can return to Windows quite fast. Both USB ports can be used to charge the battery, which is convenient depending on the situation. Finally, if the resolution is too low for you, you can use the USB-C ports to connect an external display, either directly via USB-C or with an HDMI adapter, and you can go up to 4K without issues, and play with a Bluetooth controller. Also, it does not support Thunderbolt on the USB-C ports, so you cannot connect an external video card as you can with some laptops. With so much power, There are not many things it cannot do. Even content creation apps will run fine. It is amazing to have so much power in such a little device. Now, let's see how it games. We did all these tests in game mode, or 20 watts. We didn't overclock it since it requires additional apps. Just remember, you have a little headroom if a game doesn't run well enough. So let's check some Windows games. We start with Forza Horizon 5. The game sets itself to 30 frames and low graphics, but I removed the frame limit to see how far it goes. And it has no problem staying at almost 60 FPS during races, even more when you're driving on the overworld. And it looks great. It's difficult to distinguish which are the difference between the different qualities. But pushing the most FPS will never be the best setting for a device like this. It's better to activate VSync and fix the frame rate to 60, even just 30, and use fidelity effects in quality mode. This will lower the power consumption in exchange of a little less quality. We used this game to test the analog triggers and the left stick, and they are excellent. The triggers have a lot of trouble, which helps to dial the beams and the brakes, and the stick works flawlessly. No dead zones, very linear, as good as any Xbox controller. Very nice. The next one was Deadloop. It is not really optimized yet for these GPUs, so it started on high quality. We put it on low, and it feels slower than Forza, because it ranges between 35 and 45 FPS, but it's perfectly playable. With this, we could check the right stick, and excellent. Would have a lot of trouble, more than the Xbox controller, which helps with precision, especially with the right stick, but might take a little time to get used to. Really a high quality controller. The last one we tried was Fortnite. Here the game is too aggressive by setting its quality to low and 30 frames, but we disabled the frame cap and turned the quality up to medium. Also, we turned the 3D quality to 100%, and the game runs fine with 60 FPS. There were drops from time to time, but nothing extreme, and the rate kept even during fights. But you might not want to play a shooter with a controller. Here, you can use a USB-C hub to connect a mouse and a keyboard, and even use an external monitor to have the complete PC experience. And believe me, you'll have no complaints about the performance. Also, you might want to use it like this, since as a console it's quite heavy. You can seriously feel the weight. You will always want to play resting it on a table or a desk, or take the opportunity to exercise by trying to keep it raised for a couple of hours. And the Aya Neon X keeps its promise. It can play any game you throw at it. Obviously not at 4K or high quality, but enough to run at the screen resolution on low settings with more than 30 frames. Much more than expected. The jump in performance the last 2 years have been impressive, all thanks to competition. Let's now throw some emulation and jump right into RetroArch to test if it can run Super Nintendo. Good news, no problem. Just kidding. Rather, to better test the D-pad and the front buttons. The D-pad separation is very good. Directions cannot be mixed without pressing them intentionally, so for fast-paced games and high-precision games like Contra 3, it's perfect. What didn't go so well was the sequence test with Street Fighter. Both the front buttons and the D-pad use membranes, but the travel is too long, much more than an Xbox controller. On the buttons it is something you can get used to, but having to press so much on the D-pad often breaks the sequences. They work, yes, but not all the time and not without mistakes. A shame because it was close to be perfect. Since the Aya Neo has power to spare, we took the opportunity to test other emulators directly in RetroArch, starting with Citra to emulate 3DS. This time we used Samus Returns for testing. We cranked it up to 4x and it runs fine, although it does drop some frames. But at 3x, it runs fixed at 60 all day. Continuing with portable consoles with RetroArch, we tried PSP using GTA Vice City Stories. We set the resolution to 3x, which is more than the screen resolution, and the game runs perfect. In this case, at 30 frames because it is the speed of the game. But there is not much to say. We do not need to install the normal version of PPSSPP, and power-wise, it does not take it to the maximum. We did the same with Dolphin. We put it directly in RetroArch, though if you want maximum performance, always install the standalone version. We test Mario Sunshine and Automodelista at 4x and they run smooth as butter. Automodelista dropped a few frames, but if you don't have the frame counter, you will hardly notice. But here we are pushing it to 20 watts. This also applies to Wii games. For PlayStation 2, we tested in RetroArch and with the regular version of PCS X2. In RetroArch, it was difficult to reach 60 frames. It is not as optimized as the regular version, which not only runs perfectly at 60, but can also increase the resolution to 2x and 3x without slowing down. Seeing this, it's hard not to appreciate how good Aether SX2 is on Android, because it runs at similar speeds and resolutions, but on devices with much less power. Let's jump now to the next level, with consoles not available on Android, starting with the OG Xbox with Emulation, with an X. We tried Jet Set Radio and works perfectly. We even raised the resolution up to 4x and it kept close to 60. With the Aya Neo Next, we can run the entire console generation with GameCube, PlayStation 2 and Xbox with absolutely no issues. Now to the next generation with Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. We have already seen that you can use the Wii in Dolphin, but the Wii was very underpowered compared to its peers. With these two, there was no chance to run them at only 20 watts, so we overclocked the Aya Neo Next to 35 to continue with the tests. We start with the Xbox because it was the first to come out, using Xenia to run Red Dead Redemption, and it's clear we're reaching the limits of this device. Not only does it push the processor beyond 35 watts, but the game only plays at 15 frames, which is barely playable. It pulls so many resources that OBS could barely take an image every few seconds. I tried with Banjo Nuts and Bolts and it runs a little better. It closely matches the original speed. Now to PlayStation 3 with RPCS 3. And the story is not much different. In God of War 3, after lowering the resolution to the lowest and optimizing as much as possible, we were barely able to average 20 FPS, which is not playable either. It doesn't look too bad, but it is not an experience to look back with nostalgia. Other games like Skate 3 run better, but don't expect the game to run smoothly all the time. And finally, the last emulator we are talking about is for the Wii U, with Semyu, this time with a C. We tried with Zelda, and after some optimizations, the result is different to the 360 and the PS3. Here, we can reach playable frame rates, with the original 30 FPS for the game, and even more if you enable the 60 FPS mode. You can finally play Breath of the Wild on the go. Well, you always could with a Switch. Speaking of the Switch, there are also two very good emulators for Windows, but they say using those makes Miyamoto pull your feet at night. Well, at least to your YouTube channel, so we won't talk about them. Just know that they work fine when overclocked. There might be additional optimization for these emulators on the future, but sometimes it's easier to wait for technology to catch up. The fact is that integrated graphics still don't have enough power to run them well, especially the heaviest games. Then there's the price. I bought it through Indiegogo in the initial campaign and with the preferential price, and I don't even want to remember. By itself, it has already a high price at almost $1,300 which puts it to compete with some desktop PCs and laptops, even with external video card and all. And compared to the Steam Deck, which is $650 at most, it's almost double the price. The Steam Deck only has 512GB of storage, and good luck getting one in less than a year or paying twice its price on eBay. But this one has much more CPU power, which can be important for some games, and overclocked, it can achieve almost the same performance, of course in exchange of worse battery life. And thanks to the community, you can also install Steam Deck on this Aya Neo. Leave your comment if you're interested in see how to install it on any computer with an AMD processor. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, retro games, modern technology, zero to tech.